Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. Food, fuel and fertiliser production has all been impacted by the conflict in the Middle East. We hear how agricultural economists see the situation.
The knock-on impact of this war may not be felt imminently at the supermarket shelves, but down the line those impacts could well be felt unless this is resolved quite quickly.
We'll have more on that a little later. First, all week, we're taking a step back in time and looking at the history of farming over the last couple of centuries. Today, we're rewinding to experience the country's last remaining example of the medieval three-field crop rotation system in Nottinghamshire. Bob Walker has been to the village of Laxton, where around a third of the land is still cultivated in strips. He was given a tour by Stuart Rose, who holds the ancient manorial court title of Clerk to the Gates and Commons of Laxton.
This is my yard, and you can see I'd still farm with classic tractors and things from the 80s. My father used to sell this equipment, so I still like to use it.
Going back to the past in many ways here in Laxton.
Yeah, that's one of the things with these little small strips in the open fields. They only accommodate a 12-foot combine, and so the old equipment is getting quite a challenge to find. The big machinery is far too big for some of the strips that we've got. These strips were managed by a set of rules by a manorial court, and it's developed into what we call a three-field system, where we've got three major blocks of land and they follow a strict three-year rotation. This field is the wheat field. The following year this will be what we call the second cereal field, which can contain wheat, barley, spring or winter beans, and then in the third year we go to a full fallow, which is no crops at all.
Right, so as we're walking alongside the strip, I've noticed you've got this wooden posts.
That wooden post was put there on jury day. That's when the 12 appointed jury members of the manorial court come into the wheat field and inspect the fields to make sure everybody's abided by the rules and regulations, and the divisions between the strips are in the right place, so people know exactly where the strip is. But it also marks the edge of the sick, which are ancient strips of grass accommodating a road or a ditch that we turn the horse and oxen round in the past, are stretched around the open fields in different places, and it covers about 85 acres, so it's quite a significant amount. Most of those are triple SSIs. Because of the traditions and the way we farm, they've never had any spray or fertiliser. They're special pieces of grass. Skylarks and the ground nesting birds use them quite well. We've got some orchids, and they're always full of cowslips.
So you have 14 tenant farmers, is that right?
Yeah, there's 14 tenant farmers in the village, but to make them economically viable, that is one of the big challenges at Laxton.
Well, I was going to ask that. Can you actually make any money from strip farming like this?
No, it's very difficult. Quite a few of the tenants have got alternative enterprises. I've got a few liveries in my traditional buildings. People either take on a contracting role or try and farm land elsewhere. So it's very difficult to actually keep up the traditions by just relying on the land you've got at Laxton.
Well, why do they do it?
Most people are passionate about the village and its special historical importance. The customs and traditions are not getting passed down from generation to generation. My father, my grandfather and my family have been farming at Laxton for a long while, as some of the other tenants.
So Is this centuries-old system under threat then?
It's obviously not economically viable. The only thing that protects it is there's a parliamentary undertaking to preserve and maintain the system and promote it educationally as well. But how you make that work is very difficult. Economics are forcing the hand at Laxton, and I think the history of the village is seriously under threat.
That's quite a stark warning for the last example of the free field system in this country is genuinely under threat.
Yeah, we're just virtually like a working museum, and as you probably know, museums rely on a lot of outside funding and people to visit it. I know the National Trust looked at it in the past, but we haven't got a posh manor house, we haven't got a posh castle, and we haven't got a gate that you can charge admission through. We're just a very unique landscape and village that is under financial pressure to exist, really.
And he has a very Unusual title. That was the Clerk to the Gates and Commons of Laxton, Stuart Rose. Like the rest of agriculture, the world of seafood processing and preparation has changed dramatically over the years. There are two separate issues which concern seafood processors at the moment. Firstly, crustacea are now recognised as sentient beings which can feel pain. Under the animal welfare strategy, which was announced at the end of last year, they must be dispatched as painlessly as possible before they're cooked. Secondly, bivalves. Here the concern is about producing a product which is free from harmful bacteria or viruses. And as I found out, new technology has made a step change in producing completely risk-free oysters. I joined Managing Director Paul Harding at the Colchester Oyster Fishery out on the Essex coast on Mersey Island.
If we start outside, there are two washing machines. We're very muddy here, so they need washing twice. So they'll go through those. So we have three different sizes of oysters, and it counts the right number into the trays that they just get emptied into blue trays for depuration.
UV light.
UV light sterilises the water, and that circulates through the oysters for a minimum of 42 hours. We've never had a positive test after depuration.
But Paul Harding has taken cleaning up the oysters to another level. The bivalves are taken to a pressure machine which is usually used by fruit juice companies to remove viruses. It's the first time any shellfish processor has used this method.
So basically we put the oysters in water, and that goes through a machine which takes it to 6,000 bar of pressure. 6,000 bar is 6 times the pressure at the deepest part of the ocean. And basically what that does, it kills anything within the oyster. It kills the oyster, but kills anything within the oyster. So the pressure goes through the shell, and then when the pressure goes off, the actual oyster bounces back again and takes more moisture in. So it gets a very plump oyster. So from my point of view, I did it so it was safe. From the chef's point of view, it's two things. A, it's safe, but B, it's easy to open. So you take the elastic band off and you can take the lid off with your fingers. And it's pre-shucked. So you've got an oyster there which is a fresh oyster rather than a live oyster, but it's guaranteed safe and it's ready to go.
Things are changing for crustacea processing too. Under the animal welfare strategy published just before Christmas, new rules are being brought in to ensure all crustacea are killed humanely before cooking. David Jarrett, Chief Executive of the Shellfish Association of Great Britain, organised the workshop.
Conscious boiling is now deemed to be not appropriate.
Now, conscious boiling means putting a live animal into boiling water, is that right?
That's correct. And some people have been doing that for many, many years. And a lot of places around the world still do that. But under the Welfare of Animals at Time of Killing legislation, that will be deemed inappropriate. So large crustacea, crabs, lobsters, langoustine, will have to be dispatched, killed, before cooking. And that is where it's going to have a huge impact on the hospitality sector. The question is, will they turn around and not want to do the killing via electronic stunning or the killing with mechanical means, that is spiking of crabs or splitting of lobsters? Because if they won't, they'll end up buying frozen, which means they'll be buying imported produce.
Has that met the same animal welfare standards as the UK?
No, short answer, they won't have been. The lobsters particularly will be Canadian, and at the moment there are only 2 or 3 countries worldwide that recognise crustacea as being sentient.
And Canada isn't one of them?
And Canada's not one of them. Our concern is the impact on the hospitality sector and the damage that could do to our supply chains in the UK.
For chefs, it means bringing in new equipment to stun lobsters, crabs and langoustines, or splitting lobsters in half before they're cooked. Private chef Mark Lloyd agrees animal welfare is paramount, but the new rules will add cost.
All chefs don't want any animal suffering before we kill it in any form or cook it or eat it. We want to do it in the most effective, safest way possible. This process is going to add possibly a lot more paperwork. It's going to be more expensive for the kitchens, and I think it's going to tie the hands of a few places that don't have the skills or the space necessary. It's going to affect the prices to a certain degree because there's another process involved. I'm concerned that we will resort to cheaper imported prepared ingredients rather than our own British ingredients at a time when our producers need to be supported the most.
Private chef Mark Lloyd. As the conflict continues in the Middle East, disruption to fuel and fertiliser supplies continues to be felt around the world. Even if shipping lanes are reopened in the Straits of Hormuz, it will take time for the markets to readjust and for the movement of goods to begin again. Over the weekend, the National Farmers Union warned that inflationary pressures from the war could soon be seen in food prices. Robin Aird manages Charlton Park Farm near Malmesbury in Wiltshire.
We paid about £350 a tonne for our fertiliser. If I wanted to go and buy fertiliser today, we'd be looking around £600 a tonne, but the biggest issue is availability. So if you're a 100-hectare farm, so 250 acre, and you were looking to go and purchase fertiliser today, you'd be having to find around £14,000 extra on top of your standard fertiliser cost.
That was farmer Robin Aird. Well, this week, the Agricultural Economic Society, the AES, is holding its annual conference in Oxford. Paul Wilson is the outgoing president.
The food system that we operate in the UK and in many developed countries is increasingly globalised. So anything that disrupts trade will very quickly lead through to potential disruptions in terms of food for consumers and food prices, and in particular for some of those who are less well off in society, who spend a larger proportion of their income on food.
Who are the biggest losers?
The only people who may benefit in this kind of scenario are those that are holding stocks of oil, for example, or holding stocks of things that can't get through the Strait of Hormuz at the moment, and then the prices are pushed up and those people will benefit. Hasn't
this exposed a massive weak point in global food chains?
I think the global food chains have certainly over the last 100 years changed dramatically. The world is a smaller place in many respects because of trade, but it also does highlight the exposure that we have to those global markets and how a little bit of disruption somewhere can have major knock-on impacts.
There is an argument, I suppose, for building much more resilience by each country having better domestic food security.
Yes, I mean, there is a food security argument that would suggest that people need to focus much more on food security in their own countries. There is an economic argument that says, well, the countries that are able to produce the food at the lowest price or the lowest environmental footprint, those countries should produce that commodity, and then other countries where they can specialise in another commodity should produce those, and then trade should happen, and that should make us all better off. But of course, whilst trade does generally make everyone better off, it does mean that we do need the trade to flow around the world. And that's a little bit of a challenge when we have these disruptions. So there are winners and losers in that respect in terms of whether we aim for food security or whether we aim for trade. And inevitably, it's finding that correct balance for each country.
There has been concern about price rises in the shops for food and even possibly empty shelves.
I think it will differ depending on the product. So there could well be empty shelves in supermarkets, but I don't think that we're imminently at that point. I mean, if we take the current production year in the UK, for example, a lot of the arable crops are already grown, but they do need this fertiliser to be spread. And if farmers can't get access to the diesel to power the tractors, to spread the fertiliser, then we'll have lower yielding crops in the autumn, for example. So there may be a reduction in supply moving forward. So the knock-on impact of this war may not be felt imminently at the supermarket shelves, but down the line those impacts could well be felt unless this is resolved quite quickly and the international trade flows start moving very quickly as well.
Paul Wilson there from the AES. That's all from us. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.